My humble respect to Guru Mahan, Guru Piran Sangran, Guru Piran Nyo, fellow Nyanis. Today I'm going to cover a new set of discussions, and this is specifically on G.B. Mahan's Kundalini meditation technique. The last few satsangs I've been talking about the benefits of meditation, the different types of meditation, and how meditation helps us. Talked about how meditation changes the structure of our brains and our mindset, the chemistry of our body, and most importantly, our experience of this material world, and obviously, our helping our enlightening process or enlightenment process. So I spoke about that. And I also, in the last, in the previous satsangs, I spoke about how the chemistry of the brain changes and that impacts the hormones and how it has a positive impact on our experiences, the health of the body, the brain, the mind, and so on, and what the benefits are. This meditation called Kundalini meditation is a meditation technique that has been there for thousands of years. It even predates Mahan, Mahan. So it's been discussed in many, many scriptures by many saints and sages. At least in the Hindu tradition, Kundalini has been spoken about. I am sure that in other traditions, there is this discovery of this force, call it life force, or call it the potential energy. Many names have been used, but they refer to the same life force or the divine force that is powering our human body. So many saints and sages have spoken about it, have awakened it themselves, and have spoken about what is the impact of this meditation. So there are different ways to awaken the Kundalini, the life force, or to be aware of that Kundalini, right? And there are, as I said in my previous satsang, there are many, many different meditation methods. The one that I am most familiar with is this Kundalini meditation technique that is taught by Jnanavalal Paranjyothi Mahan. There are also different masters that have talked about and taught Kundalini meditation, different methods. But this Mahan showed a simple method of how to raise the Kundalini, rising the Kundalini force. And this technique that he taught, anyone can practice, irrespective of race or religion or your belief systems, young or old or different stages of your life. You could be a householder, you could be single, you can have different, it can be practiced by anyone. The interesting thing is that most meditational methods, including Kundalini meditation method, requires a particular ritual, either in the form of asanas or in the form of chanting a mantra or a particular ritual that they need to follow to be able to discipline the mind to transition from the external world that is continuously, turbulent, continuously bombarded by, information, and sometimes there's too much noise in the mind. So it's hard for them to actually cognize that life force or the Kundalini force. So great saints have devised clever techniques to neutralize that external vibrations so that the mind can deepen itself and experience this life force. One such person that have lived in the 20th century was Jnanavalal Paranjyothi Mahan. He taught a technique to be aware of this life force. Actually, it's a very simple technique. Initially, people find it very difficult, but once you master it, you see that it is actually quite a powerful technique to quieten the mind down and for the mind to cognize that life force. And when the mind, cognizes the life force, the brain starts tuning itself to this vibration. And you see that everything that I spoke about, different parts of the brain starts rejuvenating. As I mentioned in my previous satsangs, the brain is a very powerful tool. If we don't use it, we, like any other muscles, we lose it, right? And more importantly, if we use it effectively, we are able to harness the power of the human brain. So in this, meditation is very important, but there are different techniques to do this. And I'm going to today talk about the technique that I'm most familiar with, which I've been practicing for more than 45 years almost. So, and these are some of the benefits that I have received and experienced, and I want to share with you. So this technique that Mahan has shown has 3 stages. The first one is the rising the Kundalini force, right? So, and you see that, the picture shows how within our body, we have various power centers, right? There are a lot of nerve endings there. So it's easier to experience the vibrations in those nerve centers or power centers if one is able to do certain practices to stimulate that part of the body. The power centers are nothing but our endocrine system, our pituitary, pineal gland, our thyroid, right up to, for males, the prostate, and so on. So you see that in this technique that Swamiji has discovered, refined, researched, and then tried to experiment it on himself, and then he took it out to the general public. The first step is actually raising the Kundalini from the base of the spine right up to the third eye. And I'll come back to what that is in more detail step by step. So this is practiced for about 14 days until the mind synchronizes to this resonation. So there must be a process of quietening it from all the other external vibrations. Then I'll speak about the second stage next week. So today I'm going to speak about the first stage only. So tomorrow or next week, I'll speak about second stage, which is called the descending step, how you raise the energy and then you bring it back and what are the benefits. So the raising of the Kundalini, I'll speak about what are the structural changes that happens in our brain, mind, and body, and what are the benefits. And then I'm going to speak next week about when the force is brought down to the base, what are the structural changes that happens in the brain and the body and the mind, and what are the benefits for that from that practice. And finally, the third step is called the cleansing step, which is actually bringing it up to the top. Again, I will talk about how it impacts the structure of our brain, our mind, our body health, and also the benefits that we're going to get from this. So let me start today with part 1, which is actually spending some time on stage 1 of this meditational process of rising, the rising Kundalini force. Right? So you see that, as I said in this picture, you'll see that the base, it's called the base eye, or in Sanskrit, we call it Muladhara, And then at the back of the neck, we have this nape eye. This is where a lot of our memories are imprinted. So many things we remember, we store, but there are many things that nature's embedded in us that, we may not be, our material mind may not be conscious of, but our subtle mind is conscious of. So this nape eye, and then we have the top eye, which I'll speak about when we cover the third stage, and the third eye or the forehead eye. And you'll see I put concentration and awareness. So these 4 parts of the body is very important. And And the red line that is passing through, you see the spinal cord that links up to the brain. So we see that, so the first step is actually raising, second step is descending, and third step is actually cleansing. So I want to cover today on the first stage. So the first stage is actually about the Guru. This is Mahan on the right-hand side, showing how he raises that Kundalini. Now, not everybody can do this. Only an experienced Guru can do this. Somebody who has practiced this for a very long time, who harness the force within themselves, and who learns specific ways of raising the Kundalini. Now, I come from the tradition of Jnanavalal Paranjyothi Mahan, so he has taught a particular technique to the experienced people who spend some time to harness this energy and also know the philosophy of it, and to be able to then impart this knowledge to others. So it requires a fair bit of investment in people's time to be able to come to this level. Many people think they are ready, but majority are not ready to be able to, well, one is practicing, but more importantly, to teach that requires a fair bit of training and experience. So the rising of the Kundalini should only be done by an experienced Guru, someone who's been in the practice for a very long time, who understands this force, knows how to manage this force, and more importantly, knows how to use the force effectively for the benefit of oneself and the disciples that are coming. So Mahan has passed on this knowledge to the gurus that he has appointed. And in Malaysia, he appointed many gurus, but one of the main gurus is Guru Piran Sivasangkaran, who was appointed as the principal guru during Mahan's time. And he was put in charge to be able to impart this knowledge to other disciples. And when Mahan attained Samadhi in 1981, before Mahan passed away, he passed on this knowledge to Guru Piran Sivasangkaran to appoint gurus. Right? Of course, the gurus initiate, but to appoint gurus require a significant knowledge, experience from a disciple, and discipline. So in that lineage comes Guru Piran Sivasangkaran, Guru Piran Velu, Guru Piran Neo, and after Guru Piran Neo taught me on how this technique that has been passed on from Mahan. So I'm going to share with you what the practice is and why the practice is so important in giving us that awareness on how it does that, how this technique helps. There are many practices, but this is a practice by Mahan on becoming aware of our own life force or divine force. So this picture on the left-hand side is so important. It shows us the first stage of initiation, how the Guru raises from the Mooladharam right up to the base, right up to, brings the trajectory right up to the third eye. And this is the technique that Swamiji is showing in this picture. So what does the Guru do? So first thing is that the Guru needs to be qualified, practicing for many, many years, has a healthy body, is able to generate that energy like a power center, and to be able to bring that energy in his hands to be able to pass on to others. We are all electromagnetic fields. Some have more elevated electromagnetic field. But one can ask the question, why is this very important? I will answer this question shortly. So here it is. So the Guru actually is an experienced exponent of this practice. The Guru raises, he taps the back of the spinal cord to stimulate the spinal cord, and then he traces that energy all the way, as the red line is showing, to the back of the brain and all the way to the third eye. So the force is raised, as I said, from the base of the spine right up to the third eye. A few things that the disciple has to do. They have to not close their eyes fully, but 3/4, observe the tip of the nose. And I'll tell you why that is important. And they have to gently bite their teeth, right? And bring the focus there. For most people, the focus in the beginning is a little bit difficult, right? So the guru says, okay, I am going to give you a little bit of sweet so that you get the sweet feeling in the tongue. He said, bring that sweet feeling in your thought. And then the guru rings a bell. When the guru rings a bell, suddenly you feel that vibration very, very strong. That sweet feeling and the vibration ignites an important part of your brain here. It's got nerve ending here, which leads to the pituitary gland. So suddenly you feel a kind of a stimulation, because when suddenly a bell rings, you see that you start feeling that vibration. So the guru then tells you, okay, you focus tip of the nose, gently bite. And what is really interesting is that the science of why this vibration happens was not very clear for many people. It happens, right? It's very similar to when we go to a very high place and drop, the apple falls. But many people did not know why the apple falls, or whatever we put it from this place, from the ground to the top. When you drop it, a force pulls. And after many years, we realized that that is gravitational force, which Isaac Newton wrote it down. It was that force was there even before Isaac Newton, but he wrote it down as, and he was one of the first ones that actually characterized that this force and called it gravity. In that same way, we see that when Swamiji taught that technique, suddenly you could feel that vibration. And I wondered why this was happening. Being a scientist myself, I just want to know, was it magic, or is it mystical, or is it there's a science behind this? And the answer is there is a science behind this, and it's fascinating how Mahan discovered this. So when you put your eyes to the tip of the nose without closing 3/4, the muscles in the socket of your eyes that holds your eyes become stretched or really tight. And then there's a muscle that is linking from here right up to there, right? As I observe my hands. So when you gently bite, these muscles actually starts moving, you know? And behind these muscles, there are soft tissues and nerve ending that traces back to the pituitary gland. If you see my previous slides on this, you'll see the brain. And when this starts resonating, that nerves are stimulated. And when the nerves are stimulated, it stimulates the pituitary gland, which has got a lot more nerve endings and so on. So when that is stimulated, you see that you get a throbbing feeling. And obviously, pituitary gland is a very important gland that releases a lot of hormones. And you feel a kind of alertness, a sharpness, and so on. And I said earlier in my previous discussions that when that part is stimulated, when there's a lot of electrical flows, you can actually feel up to 2-3 days electrical flows. And you see that this part of the brain, so if you meditate long enough, your prefrontal cortex starts getting a lot more electrical force field, and the gray matter there slowly starts increasing, and a lot more highway starts forming, and you start feeling a lot more electromagnetic fields. So there is a science behind doing that focus. That energy level is elevated. Of course, blood goes with energy. And you see that when that happens, that part of the brain starts the cell starts growing, and the neurotransmitters start getting more elevated energy, and you see that the connectivity becomes much more stronger, and you feel that elevated energy field. And over time, that part of the brain, the gray matter grows. I spoke about this in my previous satsangs, and there are scientific evidence that shows that those who practice meditation and mindfulness, their gray matter in the brains increases, the volume increases. So this is what this great saint showed, that uh, by practicing this simple technique, by him tapping and raising it and asking us to do a particular practice of observing the tip of the nose, gently biting and stimulating that part of the brain through the bell. Once that starts igniting, it starts uh, vibrating, and there's a resonance. Now, why this is really important? It's all sounds very kind of physiological. Here it is, when we are trying to meditate, trying to quieten the mind doesn't quieten. We're thinking about many things, office, family, financial. So the mind, even though everything is quiet, the mind is still very active, very noisy. So this simple technique that Mahan taught raises that energy field. And now you can feel an elevated energy field. And what Swamiji taught is that this simple technique of closing your eyes, not fully, 3/4, looking at the tip of the nose and gently biting, now helps the mind, and the elevated, electromagnetic field, the mind can lock on to the electromagnetic field. When it does that, slowly, slowly, all the other thoughts starts dissipating. So what he has created is what I call an optional thought. Our human mind is continuously bombarded by so many thoughts, one thought after the other. He has taught a simple technique now. Instead of thinking about your office or your family or just focus on this inner vibration. Yes, for a short while you'll get it, and then it disappears. You go back to your old. So as you continuously put in the effort, what happens is that slowly the vibrations time period, maybe a few seconds, and then expand and expand and expand. It starts crowding out all the other thoughts. I say, wow, initially I got glimpses of that vibration, that electromagnetic field. Then it expands and expands. Over many, many months, you start feeling that electromagnetic field much more profound. So the mind starts locking onto that. You see that all the other thoughts starts becoming less, or go in the background, and they dissipate. So it's a way of creating that optional thought, very similar to people chanting mantras. You see, the mantras are to create that optional thought, but the moment the mouth stops, all the vibrations of the material world comes on board. So here it is that without chanting anything, without doing anything, after a while, when you just close your eyes, you can feel the vibration already, because the mind is already attuned to it. Right? So Swamiji says that, and you put it to practice, for you do this intensively for 14 days. Actually, by the time you do third to fourth day, you can already feel that your body temperature is a little bit elevated. You feel as though you're coming down with the flu, but the body is adjusting to this sudden increase in the electromagnetic field. Right? So this, a simple technique of raising that Kundalini that Swamiji taught. So in this, he speaks about how, in this book on page 231 to 234, he covers this method of raising, by the guru, to give you that elevated experience of the electromagnetic field, right? Certain techniques, right? So he goes on to explain, these steps that I spoke about, 1 to 7, and what you need to do in terms of over the next course of 2 weeks. Right? So this practice, when you start practicing in the beginning, initially it's very difficult. People find it challenging, but if you keep practicing, tip of the nose gently biting, and you can start feeling that resonation for glimpses for a short few seconds. Then you keep putting in the effort. So Swamiji says, do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, and then between that morning and evening, all the activities that you do, from reading, eating your food, bring your thoughts. So you're now conditioning the mind to transition from outside to within you and bring the thought to that third eye. And slowly, when you're reading the papers or reading something, suddenly the vibration becomes more stronger. Or when you're driving quietly without the radio on, you feel the vibration. Right? So here, these are the key steps that Swamiji maps out, but you need an experienced guru to guide you. So what are the changes that happens by doing this? Remember, I covered this in my previous satsangs, or practicing meditation has an impact. Remember, I said it elevates your electromagnetic field. Why is that the case? Because by doing this practice, our neurotransmitters, which are the chemical messengers that relay information, are stimulated. When they are stimulated, when the energy flows, blood flows, you see that those neurotransmitters, which you see on the right-hand side here of you, this looks like a kind of a hair-like, and this thing called myelin sheets. These are the connectivity. As we age, the myelin sheets actually starts dissipating, and you get short-circuiting. This is because of age. And the same thing, the tentacles out there, which is what we call the dendrites, start shortening. So as we age, this happens. Or when we have worries, when we don't look after, we don't eat nutritious food, we don't exercise, this neurotransmitters start shrinking, the dendrites start shrinking, the myelin gives way, and you see that the flow of that information and between those neurotransmitters are stifled, and you see that when that information flow is hindered, it impacts parts of our brain. Parts of our brains do not work well. Then you start seeing all kinds of ailments and disorder, and all kinds of other challenges crops in. So meditation actually stimulates the neurotransmitters, and this Kundalini meditation that Swamiji has taught really impacts our neurotransmitters, the flow of information. And I'll tell you why, how by doing this, what are the benefits, immediate benefits that you start seeing. So instead of relying on all kinds of medication, all this meditation helps one to keep the brain healthy. So this is the first thing that we saw. And the connectivity, if you see in the picture on the right-hand side below, that branch expands and reaches like a highway of information flow, right? You see, the younger you start, it's good, but the more as you age, you have to intensify this to ensure that there's no degradation of the neurotransmitters, right? And particularly those who are in the 40s, 50s, 60s should intensify this more. So if you don't, it will have an impact on the health of the brain. So this is the first thing that I experienced when I started practicing meditation. The flow became much more better. And I'll tell you why. When that flow becomes better, how does it impact our experience of this world? And this is the first stage of Mahan's meditation. The first stage of Mahan's meditation also impacts other parts of the brain. It stimulates, as I said, the frontal lobe. Suddenly you see the things that you could not understand, you can understand better. You have high cognitive abilities, right? Because the highway, as I say, the frontal lobe and the prefrontal cortex become much more stronger. The mass increases. And when the mass and the fold increases, we see that our cognitive ability to, understand things, ability to concentrate, ability to think rationally, and it gives you a sense of calmness, coolness. You don't get agitated, right? Very easily. And when that happens, you also see that. So three things, actually a few things that happens when you practice the first stage. I spoke about the neurotransmitters, the frontal lobe. The neurotransmitters firing away the frontal lobe, the gray matter grows, and you see that it helps you with your cognitive ability. Very important for people who are aging, because when you age, your cognitive ability completely changes. And I've seen elderly, older people, when they walk, they're not so stable, right? You also see that they get agitated. They quickly get agitated. So when you practice meditation, you become more calmer and cooler, and there's a clarity of thought. You don't forget things. Why? Because your neurotransmitters are interlocked. The end roots are very, very long and strong. And scientific studies have shown that when you practice meditation, the myelin becomes stronger, the covering of that neurotransmitters, and the dendrites extends, not shortens, right? And this is the benefit. And when I practice, hey, before I did not understand things, things are now much more clearer. Before I used to get angry, but now it becomes more calm. I said, okay, things could be managed. The third thing is the prefrontal cortex. That's front part of our brain also expands, and you can start thinking. Your thinking improves. You can make sense. You can connect things. Your concentration power improves. You feel happy. Actually, happiness, a sense of joy comes in, and that part of the brain is so important. And the most important thing that helped me is actually creativity. It really helps you to take different ideas, combine, and come up with something new. It's amazing, whether it's, doing mathematics or complex ideas or looking at the whole economy in a kind of like a symphony, and even cooking for that matter. Our creativity improves. So this is another phenomena that I experience. I say, hey, I'm experiencing this. Is there science behind this? So in my previous discussions, you will see some of the scientific work that show this. The next one is actually our pituitary gland. When we practice this first stage, our pituitary gland is stimulated. And this is the master gland that actually controls all other, important endocrinal systems and parts of our breathing and everything else, many organs. And you see that when that is stimulated, you see that, our stamina improves, our heart rate improves, our lung capacity improves. You see that our breathing improves. So this simple first stage practice has so much benefits, right? The other aspect that has got what I call the first effect of practicing first stage is also the brain stem, that wiring that connects the brain and the spinal cord, and also the spinal cord itself. Remember, Swamiji shows how that energy is raised. And as that flow improves, both your brain stem, that which connects the brain, and this starts strengthening because the flow is strong. There's a flow of blood and energy. You see that the nerve endings, the nerves, and also muscles grow. And as we age, things starts declining. It still maintains its vigor. So we see that the brain stems, become stronger, and the spinal cord, which is so important to send signals from the brain to other parts of the body and vice versa. So the whole neural connectivity becomes much more stronger just by practicing this first stage, the third stage. That's what Swamiji taught. So Actually, if you read the scriptures and great saints, they actually talk about this experience, not in a scientific way. They say, wow, I feel the flow of energy. I feel the thinking is improved. My concentration improved. They become more creative. They feel more happier and joy. The body is more healthier, and they feel so alert, you know, I read that in the scriptures. I read that by great saints who are practicing this. I saw that in Swamiji's book. When I started practicing, I started experiencing this. And it helped me a lot in my studies, including in my PhD thesis on finding creative solutions. And this is the power of meditation, including understanding Swamiji's teachings. So what this first stage does is that there's a physiological change that happens in the brain. That physiological change in the brain has an impact on the mind. Both the brain structural change and the mind structural change keeps the body healthy, keeps the body alert. You have that stamina to, last longer than most people. The mind and the brain become so powerful that what would take people 8 hours will take you 8 minutes, right? You can figure out things very, very quickly, including complex ideas, including the relationship between the creator, creation, and yourself. This is the wonder. It doesn't happen immediately. It happens gradually. One fine day, boom, the eureka moment happens. So this is the power of the first stage of initiation, right? So what does this first stage of Kundalini awakening does? Here are some of the words that, Swamiji has, wrote down, in the flames of the tapas, that means the intensive meditation of awareness, I attain my own self. This is Swamiji's words. Here are some of the words that I wrote down in my journey of this. I realized something. So these are the words that I wrote down in my diary as I was practicing meditation. When the third eye is open, the divine eye is open. I saw divinity as an external thing, but now I realize that, and this is where if the creator is infinite, this whole idea of relating if the creator is infinite and omnipresent, then the closest distance the creator is within me. And that's what the divine eye led me to. So the creator is not external to me, but is internal, zero distance from me. So when the divine eye is open, when the third eye is open, the divine eye is open. The other aspect that I experienced that I put down in words, one gets a state of quietude. All the noise drops off, especially, when you wake up in the morning and you practice this, you get this quietude that comes in, a sense of peace and tranquility that you would never get from anything material. The noise, as I said, of the material world completely subsides. It's a wonderful sound of silence. In that silence, something very profound happens. The mind operates in frequencies in this material world. Because the mind is quiet and tranquil and peaceful, the mind's bandwidth to understand, reason, become aware, analyze, and make inferences increases at an exponential rate because you are not tying your neurotransmitters and the brain's capacity to frivolous things. The bandwidth just jumps up. You start feeling that subtle vibrations that the gross mind missed. You feel a sense of connectedness. There's an inner divine power that is within you and in the universe. And this is why you hear many great saints say that, I'm a drop of the ocean and the ocean is a drop in me. This is the experience that one gets. The fourth aspect is actually the mind's creative power is raised exponentially, because now the bandwidth has gone up exponentially, but the creative power too goes up exponentially, right? So if you are a student, if you are a researcher, this really helps. If you are somebody who's exploring the self-realization, self-discovery, the creative powers goes up significantly. The mind attains infinite possibilities and potentialities. And finally, the mind attains over time the universality and transcendentality, because it makes sense what this material universe is, what this creator is, what the creation is, and who you are. This is what that I God philosophy is. The Aham Brahmasmi. You come to that state. The mind attains that universality and the transcendentality, and you realize that the third eye actually is the highway to infinity. It really takes you deep down to the core of who you are as a being. And this is what the self-realization and the God realization that Mahan shows through this simple practice of stage one. So this is what, over the many years of practicing, we introspecting, contemplating, reflecting, meditating, and doing that service led to this reinforcing this experience of that Mahan says, in the flames of tapas of awareness, I attain my own self. This is what stage one of that meditation is. So there is a science behind this great master's practice of stage one. There's a structural and physiological change that initiates in the brain and the mind and the chemistry of the body and our own personality. And more importantly, the discovery of the divinity within ourselves. This is the first stage of this meditational practice that these great saints have shown us. Next week, I'll talk about stage two, why stage two is very important, the descending step on how, when stage one gets the universal identity, how to bring back that universal identity in the context of our human experience. With that, Sandosham, thank you very much.